Welcome everybody. My name is Matthew Hubbard. As you might know, excited to start off this podcast. A little bit of background. So in the last election cycle, 2016, with the rise of Donald Trump and just a lot of changes happening politically, I decided to start writing a blog post about what I was seeing and just kind of like some random economic thoughts as well. And with this upcoming election cycle, I thought it might be interesting to kind of continue that, start it up again, but to also supplement it with some podcasts as well. And so today we have our very first guest, Sarah Hubbard. And so she is a Trump supporter. And we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about, why she's voting for Trump, why she likes Trump. And we'll just have a nice, easy discussion about it. This will be a part of a 4-part series, so we'll also be bringing on a Never Trumper, which is a Republican who's not voting for Trump. We'll bring on a Biden supporter as well, and also a Bernie Sanders supporter, which I'm personally looking forward to. So this will be, this is part 1 of a 4-part series. So let me introduce our guest, Sarah Hubbard. So Sarah is actually my sister-in-law. She's married to my older brother, Jake Hubbard. Sarah is originally from Las Vegas. And she might have some kids running in and out. She has four kids. And
yeah, I better go lock the door.
Yeah, go right ahead. So
Did it.
Sarah has... so currently they are living in South Carolina. If we were to put like a demographic to it, we would say a suburban housewife living in South Carolina, and is a Trump supporter. So Sarah, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, well, thanks for agreeing. There's this kind of sense of like, if you're a Trump supporter, you kind of have to be a little bit more like timid, or like, sometimes you can't really say, I'm a Trump supporter, I'm going to vote for him. They call them shy Trumpers in the polls, or, the political consultants refer to them as shy Trumpers. Basically, they support Trump, but because of like potential blowback or social stigma, they won't openly be like, yeah, no, I support Trump and I'm going to follow him. Well, I guess why do you think there's that like category of like a shy Trumper? Like why, what's your thoughts on that?
I think personally, before, especially maybe in the last election, I feel like that there were a lot more people who were like that, but I do feel that more people are becoming more outspoken about who they support and why, especially everything going on. Many Democrats now who are not happy with the way the Democratic Party is going, that, just still like, I think that they don't want to come across as they're turning their backs on their party. And so I do think that the Republican Party is going to be getting a lot more support from kind of the Democrats who are kind of in that boat. But I do feel like that, I don't know. I just think with everything that's going on in our country, I feel like more people are able to kind of proclaim their support for Trump more so, at least from my standpoint, from my perspective. So
yeah, no, it's Trump's definitely had this interesting effect of like both enlarging the party, like you were saying, with like traditional Democrats coming over to support Trump, but he's also kind of, destroyed the party as well, you could say. He's brought in new supporters, but,
Mm-hmm.
traditional Republican supporters like the Never Trumpers, that's why the Democratic National Convention like featured lifelong Republicans speaking at, the DNC. So
Yeah, no, definitely. But also the Republican National Convention did get a lot of Democrat support, Democrat politicians speaking throughout the convention as well. And there have been many Never Trumpers who, famous Never Trumpers who are outspoken in the last election, like Glenn Beck, and who is now a Trump supporter.
yeah,
So I think Trump, it's interesting because I do feel like he has drawn people from both sides. And I think that that's why he stands out. And I think that's why a lot of people like him, because he isn't your typical Republican. I remember I was leery at the last election. To be honest, I wasn't during the primaries for the Republican primaries. I loved watching Trump during the debates, but
definitely entertaining for sure.
he was entertaining, and he totally brought kind of like a breath of fresh air to the debates because he was so different. But I wasn't 100%. I wasn't 100% Trump supporter. I didn't know what he stood for, and I didn't know. We didn't have any. He didn't have a record to go off of, as do like most politicians have. And so I think for me, I mean, it took some time to kind of come around and to support him. But I don't think, I think a lot of people were skeptical of him. And I think what drew a lot of people to him was that he spoke what he thought, which I feel like he didn't give the normal political answers that most politicians give. He wasn't saying what he thought, people wanted to hear. He was saying, what he truly felt and truly believed. And I think people like that about him.
Yeah, there's a distinct air of like authenticity with Trump, which could also be, a negative thing too. A lot of people don't really appreciate his, when he says things off the cuff that are maybe a little crass, a little rude. His Twitter feed has been known to generate intense, 24-hour news coverage type, coverage for a day or two. And then, people move on to the next controversy that he says. So in your mind, you that air of like almost a no filter is kind of appealing. It separates him from like a normal politician who's always polished, always making sure like whatever they say is very careful. It's not gonna offend people. They say stuff without really saying anything. Trump was kind of more of a breath of fresh air to be like, no, I'm just gonna say it how it is.
Yeah, and I think that people really respect him for that. So I mean, whether you like it or not, sometimes there is things or a tweet and I was like, oh yes, finally somebody like calling somebody out, and everything, instead of playing the political game. So I really like that about him. And I think he totally changed the political game. And I think people liked having an outsider, and especially in as a president. So
yeah, totally. So what would you say for like the desire for people to have like a return to normalcy? Like one of Biden's big push is like, like Trump's a disgrace to the office. He has no filter. Like he's not a narcissist, like, kind of like those kind of character things, and where Biden's kind of saying like, hey, come back. Like we're going to restore things to normal. I'm a good person. You can trust me. Like, does that resonate with you? Do you think that resonates with a lot of Trump supporters? Why
Um, I don't. I think a lot of supporters and a lot of people, a lot of Americans are seeing that what Biden and the Democrats say is actually, and blame Trump for, and blame the Republicans for, is actually the same thing that is actually what they are actually doing. Biden has been in office, 40 plus years, 47
Yep.
years.
Yeah.
And what has he done? I don't even know, and to me, him and Obama during, Obama, uh, Obama's presidency, the only thing that comes to mind that they did was passing the Affordable Care Act, which I felt like had a negative impact and effect on a lot of Americans, especially us and our family.
Yeah.
But I feel like I mean, Biden's the same way. He says what he thinks sometimes. And I mean, right now, we have to question,
Yeah.
his state, his health. I mean, honestly, sometimes when I watch Biden, I feel bad. And I almost am like, this is elderly abuse to put this man through this. I mean, honestly, because you could tell he loses his train of thought, and you're just like, what is going on? Are they using him? And you, it creates a kind of a distrust,
Yeah.
honestly, I wish the Democratic Party had, I wish they had a nominee that I could stand by, because I think people in America, no matter if it's Democrat or Republican, they want to know that they can trust that person and that party, So, I wish they had somebody better running. I really like Tulsi, to be honest, and
Yep.
they didn't give her a fair shot. But anyways, so, I do feel like that there needs to be a sense of normalcy, but I think that, you look at these cities and these states that have all these riots going on, and these are Democratic run cities and states. So I think that speaks a lot to, really what the Democrats are up to and everything. So, for them to say that, I feel like they're trying to make it seem like put all the blame on Trump,
Yeah.
without, and not be accountable for really like their own actions and
Their own
and
their own record.
policies and
Yeah.
their policies.
Yeah. Policies and what they've been doing, these mayors or governors in these different cities or states. I think you touched upon something that's pretty interesting that I think a lot of people like maybe are a little concerned about voting for Biden, is like this sense of like he's just kind of I don't want to say the front man of an organization, or like, he's being used, I guess, kind of to like, uh, for, pushing a different agenda, but he's just the front man. He's the showman. And, I've thought a lot about that. And, it's interesting because as I watched the Democratic nomination take place, first it was Mayor Pete, and then it was Amy in Vermont, who did pretty well. But then it gets down to South Carolina, and Joe Biden hadn't won anything. He had poor showing everywhere. So this is your state, South Carolina. Yeah. And I think it was Democratic Senator or House Representative Clyburn. He gives this an impassioned speech about someone who's been in the trenches, who's fought for civil rights, who's been there for, the African community, American community, and talked about Biden. And there's kind of this, they termed it the black, our African American, firewall or support for Joe Biden. And it came through. He ends up dominating South Carolina, and he just goes on and sweeps the rest of the states. And, Bernie finally drops out. And so, I think it's interesting, like, when I look at, the movements within Democratic Party and, that nomination process, there was, I think, this rise of, hey, normalcy, like I want someone who's just going to be like, just do a good job governing, moderate, maybe he's not on Twitter all the time, just, tweeting whatever he says. I just want like someone who's good, decent. And I feel like that kind of propelled Biden to win. But there is this fear like Biden won't call out, the left, the rising far left, which carries its weight intellectually and socially, in America. They punch above their weight, I guess is the phrase. You know, and I think there's some concern on the Republican side that Trump, he's just trying to keep them happy, but really they're just kind of using him. Would you
Yeah.
echo that sentiment, or would you disagree?
No, I mean, I do agree. I mean, my thing is that I think with having Biden be the nominee, I mean, I feel like it has caused more people to maybe switch,
Yeah.
because they don't know exactly what they're getting. I almost feel like the Democratic Party would have been smarter to have Bernie, honestly, because basically Biden is running.
Build the
I
bear.
mean, I'm not that I totally disagree. Like I don't believe in what Bernie stands for. I don't believe in socialism and everything. Like, but I feel like with the way the Democrats are going, I mean, honestly, like, why did they choose Biden? And I don't know if it's because they know he's not gonna like
He's a one-term
his time's ticking and everything. And and honestly, like, I mean, but Biden has had an opportunity. He's had 40 years to make changes throughout his political career, and I can't name one thing he's done.
Well, one thing that people that he's kind of running away from now is the 1994 crime bill that he helped pass.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean that's the thing. It's like the only things that come up, with Biden are all the negative things and the racist comments he's made as well, that I've seen that he's made throughout the years. And so, and also, I mean, he's been caught lying numerous times or fabricating, certain statements.
Well, I don't know if you'd get much support with people, saying they would say, like, are we talking about Trump or are we talking about Biden? Because I think a lot of
no. But I mean,
equally, maybe more so to Trump than Biden. But I kind of want to take a step back. Like, so like, what's like, if you look, so it's interesting you talk about like your support for Trump has kind of grown over time, especially in the last 4 years. And so I guess what really, besides maybe him, like, speaking what he wants to say or kind of doesn't really play the political games, which I think has a lot of appeal for a lot of people who are kind of disgusted with politics. But like, what would you say, like some of like his major, like accomplishments or like some things you could be like, yeah, no, like that wouldn't have happened without Trump's leadership, in the last 4 years?
Well, for me, it's been really hard, I think lately, especially with everything going on. I feel like Trump has done an enormous amount within the 4 years he's been president. But I do feel like, especially lately, it's been hard for me to keep up on the day-to-day things that he's done. But one reason why I supported Trump and have, from the very beginning is obviously I'm super conservative and I am pro-life. And so for me, when I look at candidates, that's really the most important thing: pro-life and pro-family.
That's kind of your litmus test a little bit.
It 100% is. And then everything else that comes after that is just like bonus, but for me, I've always voted that way, since I was 18 years old, and I will continue to vote that way. And so, but Trump, I mean, even just within this week, he's had, 2 Nobel Peace Prize, like nominations. And
Yeah.
I mean, he's done a great deal when it comes to foreign policy and stuff like that. I don't really, I can't keep up. I think with the amount of information we get on a daily basis, it's hard to keep up with. But Trump is the first ever elected president to speak at a March for Life convention. You know, Trump is very much pro-America, pro-family. And honestly, he's the first president that I know of who doesn't get paid, who donates all of his money, you know, from being president back to the country. I mean, to me, that says something. And sometimes I feel like with the politicians that are, you know, they're in Washington, sometimes I feel like that they may feel like that's kind of a bit of a threat, because guess what? They're getting paid, and a lot of them are doing nothing. They have nothing to show for it. And so for me, it's like Trump's talking the talk and walking the walk, and they're not doing that, you know? Yeah. So he's given up his life to serve the country.
I think he was definitely surprised when he won, and you know that's been well recorded. But there's definitely some, you know, I think there's, you know, with political actors and politicians and bureaucrats in general, like, you know, a lot of times, yes, you think they're advancing a cause, but a lot of times they're just looking out for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Protecting their own job, protecting their interests, like, you know, trying to become famous or whatever the case might be. So, yeah. I mean, that's pretty common, I guess.
No, definitely. I mean, and even just now, I mean, we're with the situation with the schools being closed and everything. Our kids are in like a hybrid schedule. Yeah. So they go 2 days to school in person, and then they are home 4 days, and they do this virtual learning. And it has been a total disaster. Anyways. And so Jake and I, we were just discussing how, you know, it's really sad because the people who are suffering throughout all of this are the children.
Yep.
You know, but guess what? They don't vote. And so these politicians, they don't care right now if these children suffer right now, because they're not going to vote. You know, they can't vote right now. And so anyway, we've been just having a lot of discussions at home and on how this is going to affect future generations. And, you know, what are the politicians doing to fight for our children in Washington?
Keeping things close. Yeah. No, there's definitely, and you know, you bring up an interesting point, these social distancing protections, like, you know, not opening up schools. It kind of feels like, you know, I mean, there's obviously trade-offs, right? There's no such thing as like a pure solution for public policy, because, you know, it's going to favor some groups and not favor others. There's a trade-off. And right now the trade-off seems to be more in favor of, you know, we need to protect teachers, you know, and, you know, kids are just going to have to adapt to this hybrid, and families that have kids are just going to have to adapt to this hybrid model. And, you know, you bring up a good point. It's like, you know, who does this impact the most? It's the poor, the disadvantaged, people that, you know, don't have a stable 2-parent household. You know, this hurts those kids, you know, and like, you know, statistically they're already behind.
Yeah.
Even with all these other factors. And then you say, no, you can't come to school because like we're worried about some health concerns, which, you know, rightfully so, or, you know, you could argue against that, you know, but it just seems like there's politicians are beholden to the people that vote for them, and, you know, it's those are the people they pay attention to. It's not really so much of advancing, you know, community or anything like that. People who vote for them pay for their campaigns is who they pay attention to. So
definitely. And I feel bad because that was off the cuff, but I did want to mention it just because of the recent stories that have come out, and Trump talking to Bob Woodward about, you know, about the whole pandemic and how, you know, people felt like he was misleading the country. And to be honest, I felt like looking back, like shutting down the whole economy and shutting down the whole United States, actually, I kind of felt like was like,
Overkill.
we shouldn't have, and now, and the reason why, like, I brought it too is because we were supposed to be in person. Our kids were supposed to go in person, but then at the last minute, the teachers union came in and said, okay, well, we want our teachers to be paid more. And our school district and other school districts could not pay the teachers more. So then they decided on this hybrid model. So everything really does come down to politics, and our children suffer, sorry to go off of that.
No, it's great.
Off on another subject.
I think politicians play on people's fears, and I think what's happening in a person's daily life is going to impact their views on whoever's running for office. And you bring up a good point. Like, it seems like the pandemic has become kind of an excuse for lots of different things, whether rightfully so or not. It just seems like it's kind of the catch-all. But then again, no one else wants to be the school that goes in person and coronavirus cases explode and a couple of teachers get sick and die, and then then they get sued. And
well, that's why I do feel like people need to sign a waiver. I do. I feel like sign a waiver. You know what you're sending your kids,
yeah.
you know the risks, and teachers, the risks. But honestly, like, a lot as a parent, I mean, luckily I'm a stay-at-home mom. I could not imagine if I worked and my husband worked, you couldn't do this. So one parent would have to give up their job. And then, because it really is a full-time job to do this virtual learning at home and to be with your children. And that's why President Trump had once mentioned, like, he wanted the money to follow the children. And I felt like that is, I wish they could pass a bill for that, because then schools would be more, it would put pressure on schools to open up, and pressures on teachers. Guess what? You might lose your job if you don't go back to work. And I mean, they've taken lots of measures to help protect the teachers and the kids. But honestly, I feel like if the teachers know, like, and the districts know, like, you're going to lose this X amount of money, they would all be opened up right now.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, if the parents are doing all the schooling, I mean, to have what he was saying, children get, like, the school districts get like about $13,000 per child.
Yeah.
I mean, parents could afford to put their kids in daycare or put their kids in private schools and everything. But I don't know why it's not being addressed in Washington right now. Maybe it will, but anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The NBA can, they can come up with a creative solution. They realize the amount of money that they were going to lose if they didn't resume the season, if they didn't have playoffs. Same with any major sports organization. They kind of found a way. It's like, a little creativity, a little, and the situations are a little different, right? The NBA is in a bubble, but like, there's kind of a sense of like, oh, if there's real money on the line, and if we weren't going to get paid, you would find a way. And I think teachers, and I don't want to say like teachers are bad, but
no, because I feel like there's a lot of teachers who want, because this is difficult on teachers too. I mean, I feel so bad for them, and it's not like I'm against the teachers. I'm against the unions, the teachers unions, but like the teachers themselves, I mean, I know that they're all probably thinking this is not working, so.
Trying to hold a Zoom class with 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds.
Oh, you would die. Yeah. No, it takes about 20 minutes just to get them to focus. Like, I feel bad. I mean, I have to sit there, and so it's hard. And I think parents are trying to support the teachers, and, but it just can't keep going on.
there's no incentive for, creative, innovative solutions because, teachers union kind of hold all the
Yeah.
power making decisions. Whereas if there was a little competition, if they, if a student had 13K from, their public funding and said, we're going to go to a private school, like you said, I think creative solutions would come up real quick. People would find a
Yeah,
way to make it happen. So,
definitely.
well, I know, we're just kind of wrapping up here in the last couple of minutes. I guess what would you say to someone who is, hasn't decided who they're going to vote for? Let's say they're a traditional Republican voter, but they're turned off by Trump's comments, his character, personality. Maybe that just doesn't do it for them. They're kind of like, okay, like he's done some decent things with like the economy and
Mm-hmm.
regulations and foreign policy, but yeah, I just can't get behind this guy and what he says, how he treats people. Like, what would you say to someone like that?
Well, I mean, personally, I do think actions speak louder than words. And so I feel like with Trump, he has like produced. I mean, he's been able to do a lot within his presidency. I mean, anyway, so first of all, I think with what he has done so far within the country, he basically does what he says. And so for me, that's something that I've always liked about him. But also I do feel like with where we're at in America, it does seem as though we have one party that's kind of really gone extreme. And we have one party that's still trying to hold on to the American values that we have. And so whether you like Trump or not, I feel like he is trying to do the best he can to like withhold the Constitution and its values. But I mean, I'm not here to persuade a person to, vote for Trump. I feel like, I mean, we all do. Nobody's perfect.
Right.
But you have to kind of go off of their record. And Trump, the last 4 years, record and everything. So, but I do feel like with the way things are going in America, I mean, we need a president to be able to stand up to, the people who are trying to break down and tear down our country. Biden even cares. I mean, he's the only one who's been able to stand up to everything he's been dealt with these last 4 years. I mean, it's been constant every day.
Yeah.
The Democrats have tried to do whatever they can to get him out of office. I mean, he wasn't even given a chance. Obama spied on him. From the very beginning, even before when he was running. And so, I mean, this guy, like an outsider, I think, was able to get into the presidency and really see like how corrupt Washington was and what's going on, and has done his best to, clean it up as best as he can. But yeah, so I just feel like Trump from the beginning wasn't given a fair shot like the other presidents have. So yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, no, totally. So
that's,
yeah, I guess if I could summarize, it's, look at what he's done. It's hard to see what he's saying. Is that just for like show? Is that just for the media, kind of thing? Or, is that just, the Democrats, the media trying to get him out of office and, trying to, make every tweet a big major story and kind of force him out,
Yeah. Well, and I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I would just summarize, like, look more at his policies and less at his behavior.
Yeah, but I also think that he, obviously he has the experience of a businessman, and I think that we weren't used to like his approach and to how he does business. And I think he took that into, obviously, his presidency. And I think some of his tactics were just, may have been off-putting to many, but I feel like in some ways it was more so, it was a way it enabled him to negotiate, certain things. And so I don't know. I feel like, to be honest, I like having an unpolished politician as the president. Yeah. I don't want somebody to be able to sweet talk Americans, but then have nothing to show for it, right. Or do the exact opposite, which I do feel like the Democrats do a lot. So, but I think it's just, Trump has been very refreshing, and I think people are just wanting, new leadership in Washington. And so that's why we like him. I shouldn't just say because Jake also likes him and supports him. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely something to be said about, coming in as an outsider. And, I think Washington, I've never been to Washington. I haven't been in politics. And so, but I feel like there is a sense of like, hey, this is the way things are run around here. This is how we do things. And Trump kind of came in with a sledgehammer and said, no, like, I have an outsized personality. This is how I do things. And yeah, that's going to cause a lot of friction and cause a lot of angst amongst the political class, I guess you could say. So
definitely. But I do feel like, and I know we've had this discussion before, I do wish there were term limits. I do, because I do feel like, you look at Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, even Joe Biden, they've been in it. I mean, they've made a career out of it.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like, if you do put term limits, I mean, we have term limits on the presidency. Why not term limits on, senators and everything? So I very strongly about that.
We had quite the discussion over the 4th of July over term limits, and just for the counterpoint, the point I raised for our listeners is that a senator is not going to be doesn't hold nearly the amount of power that a president has, and so there's that distinction. And then the other distinction is like, you expect the Congress to legislate. So that in terms coming up, that involves, writing the law, negotiating, getting a law to go from, just a draft provision to like passing both houses. And that takes a lot of work and, kind of an understanding of how things gets done. And, there's this, I think people forget that, there is benefits to experience. And if, senators are only allowed 4-year term limits, a lot of bills probably would never get written, things wouldn't get done, or if they would, they wouldn't, there's something to be said about experience and navigating the waters within Washington. And also dealing with the lobbyists, right? If you're a new senator, a new congressman or woman, like you're not going to know anything when you first show up. It's going to take you a couple of years. And so there are some benefits to having.
I definitely can see that. But what about like 10 years or 15 years? I mean, 50 years, 40 years, that's a long time, yeah. That is a long time. But what about this? And I brought this up we've had a discussion, Jake and I did the other night. What about withholding their pay until they get this bill passed? Like, just like anybody in any job, you know, if you don't perform, you don't get paid, right? Or you get fired, you know? So what about with them? Like, they have more pressure to work together and to pass, you know, certain bills for the American people. Like, so, and instead of waiting till the election's over with, or instead of waiting, you know, like how they do. To me, I think there needs to be something to incentivize these people to do a better job and to get things done, you know.
I can definitely sense the frustration. Like why don't politicians do things? But, you know, if I look back, you know, I think that's wisdom of our current government. Is like, you know, I don't know if I really want, you know, an overeager national government trying to solve a lot of issues or trying to pass a lot of bills. Is because, you know, like you said, right, the national government sits at a very different level than, you know, someone in South Carolina. And, you know, I don't know if I want like, you know, stuff being passed on a national level where it's like, no, these are local issues. And like, we need like, you know, you kind of, you know, a national mandate for, you know, mask makes a lot of sense in New York, but doesn't make sense in Wyoming kind of thing. Like, you know, that's the kind of where I'm like, you know, I don't like, you know, power needs to be pushed downwards. It needs to be pushed to the states. It needs to be pushed like to local cities. Like that's where, you know, but that's tough. So, yeah, it's just, and, you know, for the listeners, what Sarah's referring to.
No. And I definitely agree with you.
Oh, sorry, you kind of cut out. I was saying for Sarah, what she was referring to.
You cut out too.
Must be my internet, you know, I don't know. We have like 12 devices because, you know, my wife and I, we both work from home and we use a lot of internet bandwidth. But what Sarah was referring to with the bill was, the Senate Republicans tried to pass another coronavirus relief bill. And it was $300 billion additional funding, I think it was, for Americans. But it was blocked by Democrats because they said it was too small and there was a lot of, they called them poison pills in the bill. And so essentially it died. And, you know, I think there's a lot of frustration too with like the police scene and, you know, these riots and, you know, it's like, well, why can't we do something? And, you know, Senate tried to pass a bill, but that was shut down by Democrats as well. And Democrats argued that it didn't go far enough. It wouldn't really change anything, but Republicans. And so there was a sense of like, you know, nothing getting done, gridlock.
Go ahead.
Well, and I think, you know, like you were saying, you mentioned after the election, I think what happens now is both political parties look to get a supermajority where they have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And then when they're at that point, then they can just ram through whatever version of the bill or law that they want. And so this work of negotiating, moderating, trying to find the middle ground kind of doesn't happen. So it's like nothing gets done while they're split, you know, Congress, or, you know, split White House, Congress. But then as soon as the supermajority happens, a lot of stuff gets through. And we've seen that sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, we've seen that with Obama and the Affordable Care Act, and we've seen that with Republicans with their tax cut. I don't think a single Democrat voted for the tax bill. You know, both parties do it, and it seems to be the preferred way of getting things done now. So,
but I think what's hard is that there's millions of Americans that are suffering, you know, right now. And so it's hard because, you know, people are suffering, kids are suffering, you know, people are losing their businesses and everything. And we don't, you know, people don't have time to wait. you know? And so that's what's hard is like, you know, people get frustrated because they look at Washington as if they're doing nothing, you know, but yet they're still getting paid, you know? And it's like, why are you there in Washington representing me and my state and my district, but nothing's getting done and we're here suffering, you know? And unfortunately, I feel like, you know, with this whole shutdown, I mean, we've seen it in certain states, these governors use the people as their political pawns. I mean, Nevada, their governor did, you know, California, like New York, like, you know, they're allowing their states to be shut down and cities be destroyed, in hopes to get a major bailout, you know, and everything. But the people suffer, and so it's frustrating, you know. So anyway, so I kind of bring that up just because I feel like, you know, there's a sense of, you know, not only us, but I've talked to many other families who are feeling the pressure of this and of, you know, like feeling the pressure of the pandemic and everything that's going on. And even with this election, you know, and I think, yeah, so that's kind of why I bring it up. And I get it. Like, you don't just want bills just to be passed, just to pass, but there are certain things that, you know, need to get done. Yeah, need to get done. And honestly, like the whole bailout, like I worry for it because I worry about how are we going to pay for it, you know, and then how is this going to affect our kids and the future? Like, are they going to have to pay for it? My grandchildren are going to have to pay for it. Like, you know, so I think I don't just want, them to pass bailouts just to hand out money, you know, just for a temporary.
Try to win votes.
Just to try to win votes and everything. But another thing, I was thinking, I forgot to mention this with Trump is, I just read that he potentially may have they said anywhere between 2 to 4
sorry, you're cutting out a little bit. Between 2 and 4 what?
Okay. Between 2 to 4, he may have the opportunity to nominate between 2 to 4 Supreme next term. Yeah. And so I think that is huge too. Obviously, who he nominates. And so I think for me too, I know I have a few friends in the last election for Trump was because of the Supreme Court nominees. And so I think for a lot of people, they look at that as well. So sorry, Matt.
No, it's good. I was going to say, I'm going to wrap it up. I actually got to get back to work. So,
okay.
But always a good discussion, you know, and for my readers and listeners, I would say the final thoughts would be, you know, one, thank Sarah for coming on the podcast and talking about, you know, her views, her thoughts, and, you know, what she's seen from her perspective. And, you know, I appreciate that. And then again, a reminder that, you know, this is one of a 4-part series. So if you're not a Trump supporter and you weren't convinced or you didn't like hearing, you know, why you should vote for him, just wait a couple more weeks and you can hear why we should vote for Biden or why we should have voted for Bernie. Your chance is coming, I guess I would say. So again, hang on for another couple of weeks, and thanks, Sarah. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, we'll see ya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.